Good evening, everybody. Hi, my name is Dr. Laura DeVoe, and I'm a member of the Build the Era Advisory Board, and I am located in Newton, Massachusetts, which is a suburb of Boston. If you have not been to a Build the Era event before, or if you have, we would love to thank you for being here. We also like to give people some information about Build the Era before we get into our program. Build the Era is an education and advocacy organization focused on transportation and infrastructure as it relates to the Department of Transportation. Volunteer powered, founded, and built by supporters and staffers of the Pete Buttigieg 2020 presidential campaign, otherwise known as Team Pete. We are founded on the purpose to connect citizens from across the country to the Department of Transportation by education and informing the public as to what the Department of Transportation does and does not do and why that matters. Educate and inform the public to the role that that infrastructure plays in America's quality of life. Provide training and guidance on how to engage with local and federal elected officials on matters related to DOT initiatives. Provide training and guidance on how to advocate for causes using relational organizing as a primary tool, and create measurable effectiveness and change. Our mission at Build the Era is we are committed to making the Department of Transportation role in American movement understood by citizens and activating them to engage for smart and equitable investments by the Department of Transportation and for better multimodal planning in their communities. My co-pilot for this evening is Bill Bagnall, and he is going to place in the chat a link to our annual report. We just published our first year's annual report, and we would love for you all to see it and read it and see all of the wonderful things that we were able to accomplish this year. Thank you for being here and for your contributions to the attainment of our mission, vision, and values. For more information on how you can connect with us, please go to our website at buildtheera.com. There you will find information on our various social media platforms, as well as links to resources and upcoming events. Of particular interest will be our YouTube page, where you can hit that smash that follow button, to keep up with our library of videos. So tonight we have a wonderful guest, Sam Domier, currently serves as City and County of Denver's Electrified Mobility Administrator, managing electric vehicle, EV charging stations, and electric micro-mobility projects and programs. Prior to joining the City and County of Denver in 2021, Sam was Environmental Sustainability Director at Mercy Housing, America's largest affordable housing non-for-profit. Sam's past work experience also includes being named the youngest product portfolio manager at Fortune 500 electric and gas utility, Xcel Energy, managing multiple renewable energy efficiency, and demand response programs. A self-described energy, electrified mobility, environmental policy wonk, Sam earned a Bachelor's of Arts in Political Science and Environmental Studies from the University of Minnesota Duluth and a Master of Science in Environmental Policy and Management with a concentration in energy and sustainability from the University of Denver. Sam has called Denver's Spear neighborhood home since 2012 and is an avid skier, cyclist, and all-around outdoor enthusiast, which makes a lot of sense because he lives in Denver, and is personally committed to a cleaner environment and a more sustainable future. Thank you very much, Sam, for being here, and welcome to your first Build the Era event.
Thanks for that introduction. Really appreciate it. Happy to be here, and first of all, congrats on year one of Build the Era, and thanks for all the work that you all are doing to support these types of efforts. So I will go ahead and share my screen now.
Excellent.
And if you could let me know as soon as I get this going, whether or not you're able to see it, that would be much appreciated.
Okay. And if you have an issue, I have it up as well, so just in case. Yep, we see it.
Okay. I will get going with the slideshow here. And be warned, I am on full screen. So if you do have any questions, feel free to type those in the chat or interrupt me, and we'll be able to get those answered at the end of the presentation. So like Laura said, I work with the City and County of Denver, and I'm the city's electrified mobility administrator, working on all things electrified mobility and sustainable transportation. And again, thankful to be here tonight. Happy to talk about some of the work we're doing here in Denver around electrified mobility. And so my presentation, it's going to take about 12 or 13 minutes just to run through a few different things. I'll be focusing a lot on our recently launched electric bike incentive, which some of you may have heard about. And then I'll dive in very briefly to some of the other programs that we have been able to work on over the past couple of years. So with that being said, let's get started. So a little bit of background, I guess, I want to provide to you. I work in the city's Office of Climate Action, Sustainability, and Resiliency, or CASR is the acronym that we use. Mayor Michael Hancock and the Denver City Council created the Office of Climate Action, Sustainability, and Resiliency in 2020 to manage the city's ambitious emission reduction goals and sustainability programs in collaboration with fellow departments, other units of government, and community partners. CASR's mission is to first act with urgency to proactively mitigate climate change by advancing science-based strategies to reduce greenhouse gas emissions on a scale and timeline that align with the recommendations from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. Second is to cultivate resiliency in the face of potential climate change-related emergencies. Third is to secure an economically, socially, and environmentally sustainable city for years to come. And fourth, to ensure that setting of goals and metrics and monitoring of the results considers equity in its work. So how are these things funded? That's the question we get all the time, and I'll talk a little bit about that here. On November 3rd, 2020, the people of the City and County of Denver voted in favor of ballot initiative 2A, raising the local sales and use tax by 0.25% to create the Climate Protection Fund, or CPF is the acronym you'll hear me use. The CPF, which is expected to raise up to $40 million per year, is dedicated to eliminating greenhouse gas emissions and air pollution, supporting climate adaptation, and creating new jobs to empower Denverites and improve their lives with efforts focused on communities most harmed by climate change, including low-income households and communities of color. The bill states that the CPF should, over the long term, endeavor to invest 50% of the dedicated funds directly in the community with a strong lens towards equity, race, and social justice. The Climate Protection Fund lists 6 categories of allowable uses, and they are as follows. First, job creation through local workforce training. Second, increased investments in solar power, battery storage, and other renewable energy technology. Third, neighborhood-based environmental and climate justice programs. Fourth, adaptation and resiliency programs that help vulnerable communities prepare for a changing climate. Fifth, upgrading the energy efficiency of homes, offices, and industry to reduce their carbon footprint, utility bills, and indoor air pollution. And sixth, what we'll be talking about today, programs and services that provide affordable, clean, safe, and reliable transportation choices, like walking, biking, transit, electric vehicles, and neighborhood scale transit. You'll see here, this is just the Climate Protection Fund language. Worth noting that here in Denver, the transportation sector is the second largest source of greenhouse gas emissions and the largest source of air pollution. And our office, CASR, believes that transportation modes like electric vehicles, or EVs, as you'll hear me refer to them, and electric bikes, or e-bikes, are key to improving air quality and reducing emissions here in the Mile High City. So, with that background, I'd like to talk a little bit about our e-bikes and the benefits that folks are getting from them. And so, you'll see here a number of benefits. E-bike is a low emission mode of transportation that, due to the pedal assistance, are more accessible for a wider range of demographics and use cases than a conventional acoustic bicycle, mainly because range, cargo capacity, and accessible terrain are all increased with an e-bike. E-bikes offer an attractive alternative to vehicle travel for many road users, and thus may play a crucial role in achieving mode share emissions and vehicle miles traveled, or VMT, reduction goals. A little bit of background on e-bikes for those that aren't familiar. They have become increasingly popular in the last few years. I'm sure many of you have seen them out on your city streets. Between 2018 and 2021, units sold in the US annually increased from less than 300,000 to over 1 million. And despite the establishment of a stable and growing market, e-bike ownership still remains prohibitively expensive for many people. According to Portland State University, the average purchase price of a commuter e-bike ranges from $1,000 to $5,500. This is in contrast to the average purchase price of around $28,000 for a private vehicle. So because of this stark difference in cost, encouraging the transition to e-bikes is a potential tool for pursuing transportation equity. However, as mentioned, the upfront cost of an e-bike purchase is a hard pill to swallow for many potential adopters of technology, particularly individuals earning low incomes. So, with that being said, Denver's e-bike rebate program. We launched the program on Earth Day, April 22nd of this year. And right now, the rebate amounts are $400 for all Denver residents. Those are folks who do not income qualify. The rebate is $1,200 for Denverites earning a low income and who do income qualify. There's a $500 adder on top of both of those rebate amounts for e-cargo bikes. And it's a point of sale rebate, meaning that we worked with bike shops to actually apply the discount up front, so folks don't have to worry about coming up with all that money and then going and applying for a rebate afterward. So on May 11th, the program actually reached capacity and is not accepting additional applications at this time. In less than 3 weeks, we received more than 3,000 applications, 40% of which were from income qualified residents. We will open the application again for limited release rebates as funding is available throughout the rest of this year. And for those folks who want to know more about the next iteration of our program, you can sign up for notifications for when our application is live again by going to denvergov.org/ebike. And I will mention that as of today, more than 700 e-bike vouchers have been redeemed by Denverites. So there's obviously the applications, but we've actually seen more than 700 vouchers get redeemed. And 54% of the program's funding is going toward Denverites earning a low income. So a little bit more info. We have about 20 participating bike shops as of today, and we continue to add new ones. You can see here, they're spread around the metro, fairly consistency. We do have some gaps that we're looking to fill in the southwest corner and southeast corner, for example, and we continue to work on that. You'll see in the lower left-hand corner of your screen here, we've got Hushmand at eBikes USA, one of our bike shop partners, working with a customer to get him on one of their e-bikes here in town. So how have things gone? Well, I'll preface all that by saying we're still in the early stages. This thing is just over a month old, and so we're still learning. But we think that Denver's e-bike rebate program has been successful to date for a few reasons. First, it includes nearly all electric bike designations. That means class 1, 2, and 3 e-bikes qualify as long as they don't exceed power ratings of 750 watts. Second, it focuses on electric bikes that riders can actually use for utility purposes. For example, picking up the kids from school, buying groceries, getting to work, etc. Full suspension electric mountain bikes are specifically excluded from the rebate program. It's not about giving people a fun new leisure toy, especially here in Colorado. It's about providing car alternatives that can help reduce traffic and reduce emissions. Lastly, as I mentioned earlier, the rebate is redeemable by purchasing through a number of local bike shops. Sure, it'd be nice to just order a cheap e-bike online and use the rebate, but instead the Denver program is helping local businesses that sell e-bikes and provide follow-up, service, and repair, which is key. For this type of program, we think that makes sense. Many riders are taking part in this activity for the first time. They're new to e-bikes, and so the support of a local dealer that can provide service and answer questions is invaluable. So that was e-bike libraries. What about just e-bikes themselves? E-bike libraries here I'm going to talk about is different from our e-bike program. And e-bike libraries is something that we actually offer in the city and have been for a couple of years. So maybe folks aren't quite ready to go out and purchase an e-bike yet. E-bike libraries gives them a taste of what that's like. So our office, CASR, in partnership with Northeast Transportation Connections, or NETC, and West Corridor TMA, is offering e-bike libraries in several neighborhoods for free use. The e-bike libraries provide easy access to e-bikes to community members through a simple bike sharing program. And a little bit of background on what you're seeing here. NETC operates 3 publicly available e-bike libraries in the Globeville and Elyria Swansea neighborhoods of Denver. You can see those 3 libraries here on the map. They're near the intersection of I-25 and I-70 if you're familiar with the Denver area at all. NETC has 30 e-bikes between these 3 e-bike libraries where the community members can check out and check back in e-bikes as needed. So in addition to these publicly available libraries, West Corridor TMA has deployed 40 e-bikes in multiple affordable housing communities for use by residents all over Denver, in particular neighborhoods Denver's Sun Valley, Lincoln Park, Sunnyside, Highland, and Five Points neighborhoods. Moving on to more modes of electrified mobility, e-car share, another way that people can get around here in the city. And as many of you know, car sharing, an innovative solution to mobility in cities where residents may not be able to afford, or maybe they don't want to own a car, but they can subscribe to used shared vehicles instead. Denver is fortunate that local nonprofit Colorado Car Share calls our metro region home and works to provide car sharing as a service to empower our Denver community members. This is going back a couple years. In August of 2020, our office funded 7 new electric car share vehicles at 6 EV charging stations. You can see those on the map here. And that effort was focused on improving mobility in the under-resourced communities that they're located in. Vehicles, like I mentioned, are managed by Colorado Car Share, which also provides subsidized memberships for residents of these areas. Income qualified residents can sign up for discounted memberships by visiting carshare.org. Another option we have here in Denver for electrified mobility was something that launched in October of 2021, the Montbello Connector microtransit service. A little bit of background on what this is. In September 2020, the city initiated a planning study to discover where a neighborhood transit service should be operated to serve community needs and improve mobility for residents. Following a thorough review backed by community engagement and in coordination with the Regional Transportation District, which is our metro public transit agency, Denver chose the Montbello neighborhood, which is located in Northeast Denver, just north of Interstate 70. So as mentioned in October 2021, the city's Department of Transportation and Infrastructure, or DOTI, as we refer to them, and the CASR office launched the microtransit service in Montbello. All rides are free and available weekdays from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. with on-demand trips anywhere in Montbello and or between the nearby Peoria rail station. The city utilizes 3 vehicles, a wheelchair accessible van, a plug-in hybrid minivan, and an all-electric sedan, the latter of which was purchased with money from CASR's Climate Protection Fund. And I will just plug, we are looking to expand that service to nearby neighborhoods later this year. So stay tuned, more to come on microtransit here in the Mile High City. So e-bikes, electric vehicles, what about folks who maybe just want to have their own electric vehicle and charge that here in the city and drive that around to run errands and get around town? So for those folks, Denver owns or operates more than 24 publicly available EV charging stations across the city. You can see those on the map here represented by the blue dots. You can see them located a lot in the city center, some into the neighborhoods, and then a couple blue dots you'll see out there in the northeast part of the city. That's Denver International Airport, DIA. We're in the process of adding more. So the purple dots represent non-Denver owned or operated EV charging stations, which obviously residents can take advantage of as well. For a map of all of the EV charging stations in Denver, we advise folks to check out plugshare.com. Really helpful resource for folks interested in level 2 charging, fast charging, whatever the case may be. You can filter and figure out what's the best option for you. And last but not least, EV charger rebates. So maybe you've got an EV, maybe you just want to be able to charge that at home. Denver EV owners interested in charging up at home can consider installing their own level 2 charger. Denver's EV charging home wiring rebate, which just launched earlier this year, provides up to $1,000 or up to $1,700 for income qualified residents to assist with installing a level 2 charger in their home. Residents can use any licensed electrician to install this equipment as long as the contractor is registered with Denver's Climate Action Rebate Program here in the Kaiser office. In addition, Xcel Energy, our local utility, offers rebates for EVs and EV chargers. Denver residents are allowed to and encouraged to sign up for Xcel's EV Accelerate at Home program to take advantage of additional funding opportunities. So with that being said, I think I'm about on time with what I said earlier. That's all I've got for the presentation part, and I am happy to answer any questions you might have at this time. So thanks.
Thank you so much, Sam. So we're going to Sam will take himself off share screen, and we have a few questions that I've gotten from the audience, and then depending on time, we will open it up for more questions. So the chat was exploding. You have some people on this webinar who already own e-bikes who are speaking about how important it is to them in terms of their quality of life, how they're getting around, how they've replaced their car, that they may not own a cargo bike, but they've added satchels and things of that nature and are able to do a lot of the things that they need to get their errands done. So we've dropped the article about the program that ran in bicycling online on bicycling.com. The program was wildly successful, Sam. Did it kind of blow you away how fast it took off?
Yeah, to be completely honest, we weren't expecting this much traction. You know, there was a bit of a challenge internally of, well, Sam, let's go ahead and see how many applications you can get. Mm-hmm. And I said, okay, we'll see if we can do that. And so originally, yeah, we had expected maybe a few hundred. Mm-hmm. And within 3 weeks, we were looking at a few thousand. And so it was really surprising to us. To some of us, I guess I kind of expected it to take off, just knowing that there was so much popularity and so much interest in e-bikes right now. I watched what happened during the pandemic and how biking became a thing that people got back into or got into for the first time. And you know, just living here in Denver and as somebody who moves around the city using my bike and a number of other modes of transportation, e-bikes were definitely something that I think were on people's minds. So it surprised us. Yes, absolutely. That's why we had to pause the program, had to go back and scramble a little bit, find some more funding. And as a result, we were able to get that funding out to close to 3,000 Denverites. So yes, we were overwhelmed, to say the least.
So where did you get the additional funding from?
Yeah, so we actually shifted a little bit from what we were planning to spend later this year. This program is also part of a larger climate action rebate program of about $9 million over the course of 3 years. And so we were able to shift things around a little bit to put a little more focus on e-bikes. And that is something that we're going to continue to push for moving forward. We realize there's popularity. We realize these things are in demand. And so we're going to continue to push to continue that funding stream for this particular program in the coming months and years.
I have a question. I have a couple more questions, and then Mackenzie, I'll get to you. In terms of, you have discussed in your presentation that you have 25 shops where you have these point of sales opportunities, so that basically what that means is someone goes in and buys the bike, it gets knocked, the rebate gets knocked off right there at the point of sale. You have 25 shops that you currently work with. Do the shops come to you? Do you go to the shops? Well, I'm asking these questions because I know that that's what people are going to want to know for their community. How much has to happen from the agency side out, and how much from the public side in?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'll start by saying it was and continues to be a lot of work to engage that many bike shops. You know, we started designing this program almost a year ago, and last fall was really when we started reaching out to every single bike shop we could find here in Denver. First of all, asking for their feedback. What do you think about this concept? What would you like to see? What would your customers like to see? And so having those conversations, it was 30, 60-minute calls with each and every bike shop that was willing to talk with us. And so I think it started back then, and that's important to acknowledge, is that this program wouldn't be as successful as it is today without their initial participation. So it was just a Google search and working with some of our bike partner organizations here in town to get a list of all the bike shops, and it was divide and conquer between the staff and reaching out by email, phone, however we could to engage them. And so initially, you know, we had about a dozen folks that were on board, and I think that was really exciting for us that we got that many. As the program launched and more people found out about it, there were other bike shops that were finally able to get back to us and kind of came out of the woodwork and said, hey, great program, how do we participate? So while we did a bunch of due diligence and a bunch of outreach, people were just busy. Maybe they didn't have the time to chat with us right then. But when the program launched, we almost doubled that amount because folks got back to us and said, hey, if we want to be part of this, how do we get signed up? So a lot of groundwork, but also now at this point, a little bit more reactionary as we are adding more bike shops by the week, it seems.
Yeah. And I want to make sure before we go to Mackenzie's question is, can you tell us more? There's a part of this program that goes to the essential worker component. Can you give us a little more idea of what that looked like and what that means in the implementation of the program?
Sure, and just to clarify, I think, you know, we've done a few different e-bike programs over the years. When we talk about the e-bike libraries, so that was something that launched prior to this in the past couple years, there was a focus on serving those essential workers here in the city. So folks who, during the COVID-19 pandemic, were the ones that had to go to work every day. They didn't have the luxury of working at home. And so as part of the CARES funding that we received from the federal government, we had to make sure that we were focused on those folks. And so that was obviously, a lot of those folks tended to fall into that under-resourced category. So earning a low income and that sort of thing. And so had to make sure that they were taken care of with e-bike libraries. When we launched the e-bike incentive program here in April, I think that obviously our office's focus is on getting funding, 50% of our funding out the door with an equity focus. And so when we launched the program, we wanted to make sure that there was a low income carve out for people that probably needed those resources more than a lot of Denverites. And so you'll see our different rebate levels. For those folks who fall into that category, we're looking to cover anywhere between 70 to 80% of the cost of an e-bike. And so that's why you'll see the $1,200 rebate level associated with folks earning a low income, because they need the extra funding to make that a reality. And so that's important for office. That was a number one priority when we set up the incentive tiers, was how do we engage the under-resourced folks here in Denver who maybe need a little extra help in getting an e-bike, which is essential for all of our community members. So definitely a focus for us was doing that low income carve out.
Fantastic. Mackenzie's been very patient. Mackenzie, why don't you take yourself off mute and ask your question?
Hi, thanks for your presentation. I'm really curious, and I know that, it's still very new, but do you have any information on like geographic distribution? Are the people who are getting e-bikes coming from neighborhoods where, you know, they might be farther from a transit line, or in terms of density, proximity to supermarkets? Like, are there any trends emerging in who's uptaking this?
Yeah, thanks for that question, Mackenzie. To answer your question, we don't know yet. We are currently conducting that analysis. When people apply, they do give us their address, and we do track which bike shops, for example, they buy from. So we are doing some mapping exercises just to get a better understanding of what areas of the community are getting served by this rebate program. And so while I don't necessarily have anything that we can share publicly yet, we are looking at it very closely. And with the next iteration of rebates, whenever that may be, we are going to make sure that we're focusing maybe on areas of the community that need it more than others. And so to your point, is it near transit lines? Is it near grocery stores? Is it near other essential services? That's something that we're taking a very close look at and understanding how these e-bikes are getting utilized in the city. But we don't have anything yet. That is something that we will continue to focus on. Believe me, that's something we're really excited to dig into.
Thank you, Mackenzie, for that great question. Several people asked in the chat about safe parking for the bikes. There's folks who are, as I said, e-bike owners right now, and they're finding that the only real kind of hitch to this is that idea of safe e-bike parking. As you've built out the infrastructure to support this program, have you put in more bike racks? What does that look like? What are your thoughts on that particular challenge?
Sure. Yeah, this particular program is focused on funding the e-bikes themselves. Now, that doesn't mean we haven't thought about the infrastructure challenges and the safety implications of that. So we're working with DOTI, the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure, to, again, see where these e-bikes are getting utilized, and see where exactly we might need to add some additional infrastructure. So not just bike racks, but bike lanes, protected bike lanes, other things here in the city to help folks. And so we're also working on, with our communications team, on a campaign that actually reminds people the rules of the road. Here's what it's like for e-bikes, for cars, for everybody. Here's what it means to share the road and be safe with all those different modes of transportation. So we are very cognizant of the impact that e-bikes, bikes, scooters, everything in general has here in the city. And we're working with other departments to make sure that we have the infrastructure to handle that. Now, it's always that chicken or egg argument. Do you bring the e-bikes first and then do infrastructure, and then e-bikes? I think we're trying to do our best of doing both at the same time. We can't afford to wait to have one come before the other. And so working with other departments and getting the safety messaging out there as well is key for this program. So we're working on both of those things. I'll leave it at that.
As a plug, you should check out our last happy hour where we talked about traffic gardens. And so that allowed for you to build out that educational component in terms of letting young people, children, learn about the rules of engagement on the streets and what bike lanes mean and what roundabouts mean and all that kind of stuff. So check it out. Jonathan has a question about the climate of Denver. So Jonathan, take yourself off mute and ask your question, please. You may have taken a step away. Are you there? Oh, there he is. Okay.
There I am. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Very good. So just had a question, being from a cold weather state in Maine. Just looking at biking in general in the winter, obviously kind of declines somewhat. So I was curious in Denver with this e-bike program, if you're finding that it's kind of a seasonal thing or if people are using it year round.
Yeah, that's a good question, Jonathan. I think as someone who grew up in Minnesota, I'm very familiar with winter climates and the challenges that go along with biking in a winter climate. That's why I moved to Denver. So Denver itself, yes, we do get snowstorms. You do get the occasional foot of snow. The best part about living here is it generally melts. within 2 or 3 days. And so just because of the sun and our clear skies and everything like that, snow doesn't usually stay on the ground here for long, like it did in Duluth, Minnesota, where I went to undergrad. So I will say that we don't know yet. You know, the program launched here in April, and so we're going to watch as things develop throughout the course of the year. But myself, many of my coworkers, we are avid bicyclists, and you'll see us out on the streets in the middle of winter. Maybe that means we take off that midweek day when there's a foot of snow, but by Friday again, we're biking. And so we do think that this will be a program that will be useful throughout the year. We think that folks are going to rely on e-bikes throughout the year, and depending on what type of e-bike they buy and tires and all that kind of stuff, these could certainly be ways that people can get around year round. So to answer your question, we'll see what happens, but I do believe that here in Denver, we're probably going to fare a little better than cities in the Northeast or other areas of the country where it is a cold weather climate for those months out of the year, but we shall see.
Thanks.
As you've been putting this, and this is part as you put into your presentation, this is really part of a broader electric vehicle infrastructure expansion program. And you said that, you know, you want to try to get to e-vehicles by 30% by 2030. Is that what the goal was?
Yep.
So you've got infrastructure issues. You've got to put in EV chargers and all that sort of thing. Are people seeing this? How does the community see this expansion? Are they on board with it? What are some of the kind of, you know, change is hard. People don't always understand what's happening. How do you kind of build out that idea of trusting this program and the importance of the program as you're being this is a pretty aggressive timeline. This is a really innovative program. How are you going to get people on board when there's so much change happening so quickly?
Yeah, I think it's a challenge, no doubt about it. And it's much easier said than done. You know, here in Denver, we're thankful that our voters approved the Climate Protection Fund by a 2/3 majority. I think it's something like 66%. And so there is a lot of support for these innovative climate action programs here in the city. So my work is just part of a larger effort. We've got things going on in solar. We've got things going on in building energy efficiency. A lot of those things I rattled off at the beginning of my presentation. So I think we do have a lot of support here in the community. I think that's the first step. Is Denver is just a really progressive, really forward-thinking place where we realize the importance of what's going on. We realize the science, and we realize what needs to be done to solve those issues. And so thankfully, a city like Denver allows that to happen. In terms of actually making the projects happen, there's definitely challenges. You know, there are folks who are kind of stuck in their ways and maybe don't want to share the road between vehicles and bikes. There are folks who maybe want to see those dollars go more towards traditional infrastructure than some of the things that we're looking to fund. And so it's a balance, right? I think that we have to have those conversations. We have to understand what folks want. But in the end, the voters have mandated this upon us to push these innovative programs. And so, yes, there is going to be challenges and people who don't want to see that change. But overall, we've worked with folks a lot. And once they understand the benefits of electrified mobility, you can talk about energy security. We all know gas prices are expensive now. Well, let's go ahead and charge up the car using kilowatt hours from a utility that is increasingly using renewables as opposed to relying on gas. Once you have those types of conversations with folks and they understand that not only does it make sense environmentally, but there's an economic advantage to e-mobility, that's when things get a little bit easier. Still, definitely a challenge at times, but it's worth having those conversations and really having that back and forth and understanding the concerns and talking through those to get on the same page. And thankfully, folks in Denver here are supportive of those efforts.
So the US DOT has grants for opportunities to expand out e-bikes and e-vehicle programs. Are you tapping into any of that from the new infrastructure law, or are we too early in the days for that?
Yeah, I'll say we'd love to utilize federal funding for additional projects here in the Mile High City. I think I don't know if you all are familiar, but just yesterday, the state of Colorado passed legislation and was announced yesterday that they'd have $12 million to fund an e-bike incentive program. And so we're working very closely with the governor's energy office to understand what that funding stream is going to look like and how that can complement what we're doing here on the local level. So we also know that coming down the pike is going to be the federal funding for EV infrastructure, fast chargers within a mile of most interstates or EV corridors. And so we're definitely looking to take advantage of that. Now, a lot of that is doled out at the state level, and then they will go ahead and dole it out to localities. But the fact is, we think that in Denver, we're in a good position to take advantage of that funding if it is available as well. So yes, we are going to continue to push for using all sources of funding to electrify mobility, install renewables, go ahead and work on energy efficiency, whatever we can. I think we're going to take advantage of, in addition to what our voters have approved with the Climate Protection Fund.
One of the big parts of what we do here at Build the Era is we want people to be tuned in to their localities and be a local advocate, not only in their municipalities and their cities, but also at the state level, and be paying attention. We do know that some states are more interested in using the money from the federal government towards these types of programs. We know other ones are just saying we just need to add more lanes to the roads and not really be paying attention. But the good news is the US DOT is looking at climate, looking at equity, and making sure that the types of programs that we're able to kind of fund are going to be maybe a bit more innovative. So this gives our members an opportunity to get out there and be vocal in their own communities and talk about what might be possible. And I think that's why so many people were interested in this particular program, is this shows possibility that actually manifested into action, and it actually came true. Okay, it's not just a thought on a wall, it's actually come true. So, you know, when you look at the journey of this program, and if someone were, and I'm sure you've been asked this question before, and it may be a very long answer, but in a couple things that you learned from this, that if someone was going to go to their local government offices or even start to explore this, what are like the top 2 or 3 things you would say are really important to drill down on that you've learned from this experience?
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks for that, Laura. And I think it's going to be unique to each city, to be honest. You know, here in Denver, like I mentioned, we have a really supportive community in terms of these innovative programs. So checking in with the community first, making sure that there's going to be interest, demand for a program like this is probably first and foremost, right? I think that's a good first step. In terms of designing the program itself, it is engaging with community partners. So like I mentioned, before we even thought about putting this program together, last fall, we literally spent months talking with different bike shops. We spent months talking with different community-based organizations about, hey, do you think people would use an e-bike to get around? Cargo bike, e-bike, different rebate levels, all that kind of stuff. So we talked to community members for even before my time, you know, for the past year, trying to understand their needs, their wants for a program like this. And once we did that, we came up with a concept and then went back to them and said, hey, here's what we put together. Does this match what you're looking for? Is this something that you think would be useful? So it wasn't us just prescriptively saying, here's the program, take it or leave it. We spent the past year leading up to the launch in April working with community members and working with our community business partners to make sure that this was something they want. And then kind of the third thing, and I'll leave it there because I could go on forever about this, is being open to change. So we have already tweaked our program in the first couple months. We had to clarify the definition of what an e-bike is. We had to clarify the definition of what an e-cargo bike is. We continue to clarify the definition of the bike shop eligibility. And so focusing on folks here in the Denver community, making sure that when somebody goes in, they're going to have a good experience and they're not going to be left hung out to dry with an e-bike that breaks down and nowhere to get it taken care of. So these are all things that we continue to work on, and it's been my life for the past 6 weeks, is making sure that the program is running as efficiently as possible, but also being open to that feedback from the community partners, and then being willing to change is also very important. So I'll leave it at those 3 things for now, is if you're looking at a program like this, make sure that you focus on those areas and then go from there.
Great. Last call for questions. Anyone else? Go ahead, Bill.
Unmute myself. I'm kind of want to come back to this idea of a progressive city. You know, I would say Portland is a progressive city, or it thinks it is, and yet we have a lot of pushback on sharing the road and issues related to that. Otherwise, seemingly progressive people kind of lose their mind when roads are being changed to one direction to allow for bikers and to have a clear path to a part of town. Did you see that? You kind of alluded to it, that there was some pushback. And does it continue, and or what have you found has been successful in changing minds?
Sure. And I would probably defer to Dottie, our transportation department, to answer that question, because they deal with more of that than I do. But I will say there's been pushback just in my local neighborhood. You know, they're talking about adding a protected bike lane over here on Broadway, which runs between my neighborhood just south of downtown to the downtown core. And there's a lot of pushback, and some of it probably deserved. You know, what about providing parking along those streets for businesses? What does that look like? How do we make sure that they can still access those businesses, even though there's a protected bike lane there, which shouldn't be that big of a barrier, but some people see that as a major barrier. So I think those are still things that we have to talk through with individuals and businesses and community partners, and help them to understand the benefits that could come potentially from something like a protected bike lane, or from decreased traffic in their particular area of the city. So to summarize, I think there's still going to be pushback. I mean, we get that internally working with other departments as well, but overall, I think we are working towards progress in getting people's minds changed and helping them to understand the benefits. I think sooner or later it will come. A lot of us agree that the sooner the better for the sake of our kids and our grandkids and everybody else. But the reality is there's always going to be some opposition to something like that. Maybe in a year, maybe in 5 years, maybe in 10 years, that opposition will go down to nothing. You know, cross your fingers, but it's going to continue taking those courageous conversations with those people to help them understand, hey, here are the benefits and here's why this is so important. And it's one thing to talk, but you actually have to walk the walk and make those changes if you want to make an impact. So again, I'd probably defer to Dottie for more info on the specific challenges that they face, but it's not easy, but it's something that we need to keep working on.
Laura, can I ask one other question real quick? Pivoting to the tax. First of all, real quick, in general numbers, what was the vote like as far as a breakdown for yes and no? And B, who manages those funds, those tax set-asides? Who's managing those funds?
Sure. So there was an overwhelming majority that approved the Climate Protection Fund, the 0.25% tax increase. It was something like 66%, something like two-thirds of Denver voters approved it, which we are really excited about. I think Denverites realize the importance of these innovative projects, and we're really thankful to have support of so many in the city, and we want to be good stewards of those dollars. And so the Climate Protection Fund is managed in our office, in the Office of Climate Action, Sustainability, and Resiliency. Our executive director reports directly to Mayor Hancock. And so there is always good communication between the mayor, between city council, and obviously between community members about how those funds are spent. And so for a lot of those bigger projects, we do have to go to city council and get them approved. And so that's a check on how those dollars are spent. So there's definitely a number of different people involved in overseeing those projects, but ultimately it comes down to our office to implement them and propose good ways to spend them. I will put a plug in here too. I don't know if other cities have considered this, but here in Denver, we have folks that sit on our Sustainable Advisory Council. And so it's a council made up of 6 different working groups that actually recommends to us, hey, here's how you should spend your funding. And so it's not us over here saying, again, prescriptively, here are the projects we want to do. You don't get any input. We're actively taking those recommendations from the Sustainability Advisory Council and pushing those forward and putting those into action. So while, again, we're managing those funds, we're taking feedback from city government officials as well as community members and our Sustainability Advisory Council to decide what they get spent on. So a lot of input goes into the final spending of those funds.
Is there a dashboard? Is there for people to see the dollars where they're going?
Yeah, so what we do each year, annually, I think similar to you all, we publish an annual report, and that is something that actually breaks down spending. Now, we're in the first year of the program, and so there's not a lot to see. But moving forward, we are required by statute to present that annual report, and that's where people are able to see here are the projects that are funded, the dollar values, and the breakdown between the different areas. So sustainable transportation, renewables, energy efficiency, etc. And I can, if you give me just a second, I can drop a link to that here in the chat so you can see our first iteration of our annual report.
Great, thank you.
So I want to thank Sam for being here and being a part of tonight's program, and thank everyone from Build the Area for being here. Thank you for all of our audience members and your wonderful questions. And I would like to just say that this will be available on our webpage through our YouTube channel for folks to see at a later date. And please share with people in your community who can help you make these types of things happen. Sam, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you. Great talking with you all. Thanks for all the hard work that each and every one of you is doing in your communities to advance these things. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody, and have a wonderful night, everyone.